Have you ever thought about what happens when an entire population ages and retires? The current protests in France may give you a glimpse of the issues that arise when governments try to address this problem. Millions of people across France have been protesting against President Macron's decision to raise the minimum pension age from 62 to 64, which highlights a much deeper issue. France is in the middle of a population collapse. The French government, like many other European countries, has a mandatory state pension. This means that the government taxes people in the working age to provide pensions for people in a retirement age. The retirement scheme plays a big role in France's broader social security system, which is huge. The government spends around 15% of France's entire GDP on it. Social security provides a lot of benefits, including free healthcare and state pensions for everyone. Unfortunately, it's not sustainable in the long run. The French government has been running on a budget deficit for years. It spends more money than it collects in taxes. The debt as a percentage of GDP has been rising for years, which means that its government's debt is growing at a faster rate than France's overall economy. This is a problem because eventually, the debt will reach unhealthy levels. The French government is looking at ways to prevent this from happening. A good way to do this is by cutting spending. The social security system, where the government spends 15% of the country's GDP, is one of the places to do this. It's a huge expense, which the government can't afford, at least when you look at the debt figures. By raising the minimum pension age by 2 years, President Macron hopes to solve this issue. But let's take a look at the underlying problem here. Why is France's economy not able to afford its social security system in the first place? After all, the system was never designed to put France into a budget deficit. The idea was that working taxpayers would always be able to pay for the retirees, but that's just not the case anymore. Apparently, France doesn't have enough income from taxes to put into its social security program. The reason behind this is a demographic reality. France's median age is rising at a very fast rate. It now sits at around 42 years old, which means that probably around half of France's population is older than 42. This has some huge effects on the social security system. There are more elderly retirees and fewer tax-generating people of working age in the country. Back in the 1960s, France had 4 workers for every retiree. That number now stands at 1.7 workers per retiree. This means that there are fewer workers for the government to tax and more retirees for the government to pay for. Because of this demographic reality, France's social security system is running into deficits every year. How can 17 workers realistically pay for the pensions of 10 retirees? The demographics of France are messing up its social security system. The only way forward is to raise the retirement age. You'll get more workers and fewer retirees, which will solve the problem in the short term. But obviously, this isn't too popular in France, as we've seen in the last few weeks. Millions of people went onto the streets to protest this. As we've seen, France's situation illustrates perfectly how problematic this population collapse really is, not just for France, but for Europe as a whole. It's not just a problem for social security systems, but also for economies, healthcare systems, and political stability. The implications of an aging population are far-reaching and will require difficult and unpopular decisions from governments around the world. Did you know that the ratio of elderly people to younger people is rapidly increasing in Europe? In 2022, it was as high as 33%. That means there are only 3 people under the age of 65 for every elderly person above that age. And the bad news is, this is only going to get worse as time goes on. By 2100, the old age dependency ratio is projected to be at 57%, meaning there will be less than 2 younger people for every elderly person in Europe. This trend has serious implications for the continent, as it could lead to the collapse of many systems, including pension systems, healthcare systems, and financial systems. Let me break down the reasons why. Older people in Europe don't work as much as younger people. Most people retire at the age of 64. Retirees don't produce things for the economy anymore, but they do need a lot of financial and social support. The elderly receive pensions and need to use things like the healthcare system. In France, we've seen that the pension system doesn't work out if you don't have young people to support it. The French government needs to receive taxes to give out pensions to retirees. To collect those taxes, you need people under 65 who are driving the economy forward. With the healthcare system, it's exactly the same. To have a functioning healthcare system, you need doctors and nurses. Most of the time, those people are under 65. But remember that Europe has only around 3 people under 65 for every retiree, soon to be 2. There are only 3 people to provide the financial support for every retiree. immigrants come from Africa, where the fertility rates are much higher. For France, it doesn't take much of a sales pitch to get immigrants into its country. Immigrants have a lot more opportunities in France than most of the time in their home country. France just has a better education system and better paying jobs than most countries in Africa. So this is a win-win situation, right? France gets the young people they need for their labor market, and the immigrants get a brighter future for themselves. But every solution has its pros and cons. Not everyone in France and in Europe more generally is happy with mass immigration. Some more conservative political parties are afraid that a large foreign population has some negative effects. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe and enable notifications to view future information about global economics and business. Until next time.